Hello students, welcome to Zoology Classroom. In this video, we are going to know about major types of body fluids and fluid compartments. So as we know, water is a basis for life. Without water, there is no life. And many biochemical reactions occur in the fluids that are present inside our bodies. And the body fluids can be classified into two types. One is intracellular fluid, and that is also called as cytoplasm. This is present inside all the cells. And second type of body fluids present inside our bodies is named as extracellular body fluids, which are outside the cells. And these extracellular body fluids are again classified into two subclasses. One is intravascular and second one is extravascular. So intravascular is nothing but blood plasma, and remaining all other types of extracellular body fluids can be called as extravascular. So there is a typo in this extravascular. And again, this extravascular is of two types. One is interstitial. It is present outside the cells. This is also called as tissue fluid. And second one is transcellular fluid. So these are the different types of body fluids which are present inside our cells. And coming to what are fluid compartments, the areas or the parts which are consisting of these fluids are called as fluid compartments. Whereas coming to this intracellular fluid compartment, intracellular fluid, in other words, cytoplasm, is present in all the cells. So what makes the intracellular fluid compartment? All the cells are called as intracellular fluid compartments. And coming to intravascular fluid compartment, all the blood vessels are called as intravascular fluid compartments. And interstitial fluid compartment, and it is not confined, it is not having a regular boundary or a definite boundary. It is present outside the cells within the tissues. That's why this fluid is called as tissue fluid. And transcellular fluid also there. We are going to know more details about all these different types of body fluids and fluid compartments in this video. And coming to the body fluids composition in adult man, let us assume, let us take an example of a 70 kg adult man. In his total body weight, almost 60% of body weight consists of fluids. So out of 70 kgs body weight, 42 liters will be of these body fluids only. So out of these 42 liters of total body fluids, intracellular compartment, intracellular fluid will be around 28 liters, and all other extracellular fluids, they will make 14 liters in this total 42 liters volume. So, and of these 14 liters, blood plasma will be around 3 liters. This is also called as intravascular fluid. And another one, extravascular fluid, it will be around 11 liters. Of these 11 liters, 10.5 liters will be interstitial fluid or tissue fluid. Only 0.5 liter will be this transcellular fluid. And coming to fluid composition of adult women, let us assume the adult woman is having 55 kilograms weight. In the 55 kilograms weight, 55% of body weight of women will be made up of with these body fluids. So of these 55 kgs, 30.25 liters will be the total volume of body fluids. So of these 30.25 liters, 22 liters will be intracellular or cytoplasm fluid, and remaining around 11 liters would be extracellular fluid compartment. Of these, 2.35 liters makes plasma, 8.65 liters makes extravascular fluid. Of these 8.65 liters, 8.25 liters will be interstitial fluid, and the transcellular fluid will be around 0.4 liters. So if we see the composition or percentages of these different types of body fluids through a pie diagram, so the diagram would appear like this. So now let us come to the intracellular fluids. Intracellular fluid is also called as cytoplasm. It is present in all the living cells. So the cytoplasm, which is present within the cells inside the plasma membrane, is called as intracellular fluid, and the cell can be regarded as intracellular fluid compartment. So the cytoplasm is very, very important one. This makes the most part of the body fluid. So all the important biochemical reactions occur in the cytoplasm only. So without cytoplasm, there is no life. So inside the cell, different types of biochemical reactions will occur, like protein synthesis, lipid synthesis, glycogenesis, gluconeogenesis, glycolysis. So likewise, different types of biochemical reactions will occur in the cytoplasm. So in all these reactions occur in a aqueous phase only. So for that purpose, water will be there in the cells, and in this water, all the chemicals of organic and inorganic nature will be dissolved in this water. So the water, including these organic, inorganic chemicals, will make the cytoplasm. So this is about the cytoplasm. So cytoplasm is very, very important component inside our body fluids. And second one is plasma, intravascular fluid, intravascular body fluid. So in this blood vessels, so there are different types of blood vessels present inside our circulatory system, like arteries, arterioles, veins, venules, and the arterioles and venules are connected together by small blood vessels called as blood capillaries. So all these are different types of blood vessels. So inside these blood vessels, a liquid tissue will be flowing, and that liquid tissue is called as plasma. So in this plasma, we know blood, that is called as blood. So in this blood, there are two components. One is plasma and another one is cells. In the cells category, we can see red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. So in the plasma component is called as intravascular body fluid. So this is present inside the vascular component. So vascular component means all blood vessels. So this is flowing in the blood vessels. That's why it is called as intravascular body fluid. So blood is very, very important one inside our body. Why? Because as our bodies are of complex in nature, complex in structure, so different types of organs are present inside our body. All these different types of organs require different nutrients. They require oxygen, and all these oxygen and nutrients, they will participate in different life processes. They will participate in different metabolic activities. As a result of these metabolic activities, some waste products also will be generated inside the tissues and organs. So all these waste materials have to be eliminated from the tissues or organs. Otherwise, the accumulation of these waste material will become toxic to the cells or to the tissues or to the organs. So that will lead to the damage of these tissues or organs. For that purpose, all the byproducts, all the waste materials like carbon dioxide, ammonia, urea, uric acid, all these things have to be collected and separated and eliminated from the tissues. So this blood plasma takes this responsibility. So blood plasma supplies all the nutrients to the required places, and it will remove the waste materials, and it will give these waste materials to the excretory organs like skin and kidneys. So in this way, blood is acting as a connecting link in between different among the different organs inside our body. Without these blood plasma, we cannot survive. So for that purpose, blood circulation is very, very important. So if due to any reason, if the blood circulation is stopped, the organism will die within minutes. So that is the importance of blood plasma. In other words, we can say intravascular fluid. So this intravascular fluid, it receives nutrients from the digestive system, and it supplies these nutrients to all the cells present inside our body. It will collect different hormones from the uh, uh, these endocrine glands, and they will transfer, or they will carry these hormones to the effector regions, effector organs, and likewise they will absorb oxygen, or they will take oxygen in the lungs, and they will supply this oxygen also to all the tissues in the body. And from all the tissues, they will collect carbon dioxide, and they will collect nitrogenous waste materials like ammonia, urea, and uric acid. So these collected waste materials like carbon dioxide will be given off in the lungs, and it will be expelled to outside through exhalation process. And the excess water and salts will be supplied to the skin at times uh, in the form of sweating. These excess salts and water will be eliminated from our body. And the nitrogenous waste materials and unwanted many other unwanted chemicals, all those things will be given to the kidneys, and they will be converted into urine. Through the urine, all these waste materials will be sent out of the body. So in this way, blood plasma is carrying waste materials to lungs, skin, and kidneys. So these are the important functions of blood plasma. So without plasma, we cannot survive. And coming to another extracellular fluid, that is called as interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid. So this interstitial fluid, as you can see in the same diagram, so there are different cells. Outside the cells, there is a space, and this space is not empty, and this space is filled with a fluid called as interstitial fluid or tissue fluid. So this tissue fluid is very, very important. This tissue fluid acts as a bridge in between the cytoplasm and this plasma. So the blood plasma, as we are studying since our schooling, blood will supply nutrients to all tissues. So here what we have to understand is that blood is not directly entering into the tissues or cells. So as you all know, ours is a closed type of circulatory system. So blood will never come out of the blood vessels. At all times, blood will be flowing inside the blood vessels only. So blood will not come out of the blood vessels. So how the blood is going to supply this oxygen, the oxygen, nutrients, and hormones to all the cells. So this will follow some exchange processes, materials exchange processes, like it could be passive transport or active transport, and different other types of transport mechanisms. So through these mechanisms, the nutrients will leave the blood vessels and they will enter into the interstitial fluid. And from this interstitial fluid, again, these materials will enter into the cells. So nutrients first, they will enter into the blood, and from blood they will enter into the interstitial fluid. From interstitial fluid, finally they will reach the cytoplasm inside the cell. So blood is not directly supplying nutrients and oxygen to the cells. Blood is giving off nutrients and oxygen to the interstitial fluid. So from this interstitial fluid, again, these materials will enter into the cytoplasm of the cell. So all these transport mechanisms, so all these transfer mechanisms will follow some gradient rules, like all the materials will travel from a high concentration gradient to a low concentration gradient. So like this, different types of mechanisms will be there in the transfer of materials from blood to tissue fluid, from tissue fluid to cytoplasm. And in the same way, transport of nitrogenous waste materials, excess salts also will be done in the same way in reverse direction. That means from cytoplasm to interstitial fluid or tissue fluid, and from tissue fluid to finally these waste materials enter into the blood vessels and reach the plasma. So in this way, all these exchange of materials in between cytoplasm in the cells and blood will be mediated by this interstitial fluid or tissue fluid. So when there is no tissue fluid, exchange of materials in between cytoplasm of the cells and plasma of the blood vessels or blood is not made possible. So interstitial fluid also plays a very, very important role in transfer of materials from here to there and there to here. So that is the importance of interstitial fluid. And all these, what we have to remember here at this point is that the composition of the quantity of blood plasma and the quantity of interstitial fluid, the quantity of cytoplasm, all these liquids must be maintained at required concentrations, at required quantities. They should not be less than the normal range, and they should not be more than the normal range. If, let us, for example, if the interstitial fluid is very much, or it is in excess quantities, then that will lead to the edema condition. So our tissue, so our organs will swell. So at some places we can see that our legs will be swollen or our face will be swollen. That is due to the excess water reaching this interstitial fluid. In some disease conditions, what will happen, from blood, the plasma or water will reach this interstitial fluid. So lot of water, lot of fluid will accumulate in the tissues. So when the tissue fluid is in excess quantities, then such organs will look like a swollen one. So the swelling of face, swelling of legs at some times, all these are due to the excess quantity of interstitial fluid. So, and in some cases, when blood plasma gets thicker, that will lead to blood clotting problem. When the plasma concentration is high, so when plasma is having lot of fluid inside it than required quantities, then that also will lead to some other different types of problems. So all the plasma components, tissue fluid component, cytoplasm component, all these components should be in limits. They should not be less, they should not be more. If they are less, they will cause a different problem. If they are excess in quantity, that condition also leads to a different type of problem. So anything in excess, anything is in less quantities is not good. Everything in required quantities is good. So that is very, very important for the smooth functioning of our body. So apart from this interstitial fluid, and the next one is transcellular fluid. So the total percentage of transcellular fluid inside our body is very, very less, but this is very, very important one. Even though it is occupying a less place or less quantity inside our body fluids, they play very important role. So the transcellular fluid is of different types. One is synovial fluid, second one is peritoneal fluid, third one is pericardial fluid, fifth one is fourth one is intraocular fluid, fifth one is cerebrospinal fluid. So all these 5 types of transcellular body fluids are very, very important. Even though they are less in quantity, they require they are required for the smooth functioning of our body. If they are less, if they are excess, both the conditions will lead to some abnormalities in our body functioning. So now let us see about these different types of intracellular fluids in detail. First one is synovial fluid. So synovial fluid will be present inside these joints. We know that inside our skeleton, at some places we are having joints. So all these joints are covered by a membrane. This is called as a synovial membrane. So inside these joints, a fluid will be there. This fluid is called as synovial fluid. So this synovial fluid is very, very important one. It acts like a lubricant in between these two bones. When this liquid is not there, the movement of these two bones that making the joint will rub against each other, and that will cause a pain. So when the synovial fluid concentration decreases, that will result in the joint pain problems. So in this way, synovial fluid is very, very less in quantity, but for the smooth functioning of the joint, they are required. So they are lubricating. So they will lubricate the joint. So when the lubrication is not there, so the friction will be there. That friction results in the it will result in the damage to these bones which are touching against each other. So the joint will be damaged due to this problems in the synovial fluid. Only joint pain problems will arise normally. So this is about synovial fluid. And next one is peritoneal fluid. So we know that inside our body, we have two major cavities or spaces are there. One is abdominal cavity, which is present inside our abdomen, and another one is thoracic cavity. So these two cavities are there, and these cavities are filled with some peritoneal fluid. So all these both these two cavities are lined with a membrane. So these membranes are called as peritoneal membranes. So the abdominal cavity is lined with a peritoneal membrane. Likewise, our thoracic cavity also will be lined with a membrane, but that membrane is called with another name. So the abdominal cavity, the lining which is surrounding this abdominal cavity is called as peritoneal membrane. So inside this peritoneal membrane only, different body organs of the abdomen will be there, like digestive system, kidneys, reproductive system. So all these different visceral organs are present inside this peritoneum. So in the peritoneum, in this peritoneal membranes, visceral organs will be there. So outside these visceral organs and inside this peritoneal membrane, a liquid is there. That liquid is called as peritoneal fluid. So and this total space which is inside this peritoneal membrane is called as peritoneum compartment. So peritoneal compartment. So this is the peritoneal compartment, and in this peritoneal compartment, inside visceral organs of abdomen will be there, and all these are covered by this peritoneal membrane. So inside this peritoneal membrane and outside these visceral organs, a liquid is there. That liquid is called as peritoneal fluid. So this peritoneal fluid also is very, very important one. So this also acts as a lubricant in between these different organs of the visceralis. So in some cases, you might have seen that whenever a patient undergoes a operation, like a stomach operation, when his stomach is open, cut open, after that the doctors will stitch them. So you might have seen that to collect the fluid, some pipe will be inserted into this abdomen of the operated patient, and that pipe will be connected to a bag. So into that bag, the blood-like fluid will be received into that bag. So the fluid collected into these bags through a pipe is nothing but this peritoneal fluid. So when the body is operated, so when the tissues are cut and some surgery is done, so the damage caused due to that surgery will result in the secretion of some body fluids. So all these fluids will be accumulated in this peritoneal space, in the peritoneal compartment. So if that is left like that, what will happen? The peritoneal fluid component will be increased. So that will again result in some damages. So in some cases, usually this will occur to some babies who are under malnutrition cases. You might have seen that their abdomen swells like a hell. So when the abdomen is swollen like a big tummy, when they are having a big tummy, usually the tummy is due to the accumulation of more peritoneal fluid in this peritoneal cavity. So in this way, the accumulation or more accumulated fluid results in some diseases. So that's why to remove the excess fluid, so after the post-operation condition, for some days, like 3 or 4 days, for 3 or 4 days period, doctors will insert a pipe into this open region, and they will remove that excess peritoneal fluid from that region. So once the oozing off, or once the secretion of this extra fluid is stopped, then they will remove the bag from this region. So this is about peritoneal fluid. So this peritoneal fluid is also very, very important one. So this will cover all the different organs present inside our this abdominal cavity, and they will lubricate them, and they will prevent friction in between these different organs. As we know, when we are making movements, so these organs, there is a possibility that these organs may touch to each other, and that may cause to the friction in between these organs. So to prevent the friction in between these visceral organs, a liquid should be there. So this liquid prevents the damage to these internal organs or visceral organs. So for that purpose, this peritoneal liquid is very, very essential. So it must be there. So this is about peritoneal fluid. Coming to another transcellular fluid, that is a pericardial fluid. So you know it very well. We know that outside this heart, a pericardial membrane will be there. So inner pericardial membrane and outer pericardial membrane, two membranes will be there. In between these two membranes, a fluid will be there. That fluid is called as pericardial fluid. So this pericardial fluid also acts like a lubricant. It prevents the shocks, and it prevents the damages to these heart valves when we are making some movements. So as we know, this heart is hidden in between the rib cage. So dorsal to this heart, we are having a spinal cord or vertebral column, and ventral to this cord also we are having a sternum bone. So on the dorsal side and on the ventral side, on both these sides, the heart is having some bony structures. So when the organ is fastly running, or something falls on this organism body, especially on chest, what may happen? These bones may put pressure on this heart valve. So the pressure exerted by the bones may result in the damage to the heart valves. So to prevent this damage due to shocks, due to different various injuries, so to prevent the shocks, to prevent the damage, a liquid should be there. So whenever something comes and falls on this organism chest also, the fluid will prevent the direct damage to the heart muscles, heart valves. So for that purpose, pericardial fluid is very, very important one. Even though it is present in very, very less quantity, this is protecting our important organ, heart. And another one is intraocular fluid. So intraocular fluid also, there are two chambers inside our both eyes. So one is vitreous chamber. In this vitreous fluid will be there. And another one is aqueous chamber. In this also aqueous fluid will be there. So one will be behind this lens. Another one will be in front of this lens. So the intraocular compartment is divided into two spaces. One is vitreous chamber, another one is aqueous chamber. So here two compartments are there in this intraocular chamber. So vitreous chamber, aqueous chamber. So both these two chambers are filled with a body fluid called as intraocular body fluid. So these fluids are also very, very important for the vision. So the light rays which fall on this lens, they have to be transmitted to, they have to be transferred to this retina. So for the transfer of these light rays, the liquid is very, very important. So, and this liquid also plays an important role in nourishment of these cells which are present on the walls of these eyeballs are also. So the liquid which is present inside our eyes is called as intraocular fluid. And next one is cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. So this cerebrospinal fluid is present inside our nervous system. We know that inside our brains we are having different ventricles. So here in this diagram we can see inside our brain we are having some 4 ventricles are there. So these 4 ventricles, actually they are empty spaces. All these empty spaces are filled with a liquid called as cerebrospinal fluid. So these ventricles are in continuation. These ventricles are in continuation with the central canal in the spinal cord. So in the spinal cord, exactly in the middle region, a central canal will be there. Throughout the length of the spinal cord, exactly in the middle of the spinal cord, a canal like a hollow will be there. So this empty hollow, this empty space is called as central canal. So the central canal again, and these cerebrospinal, again these ventricles, and from this region central canal is started. So the central canal and these all ventricles, they are filled with cerebrospinal fluid. So this fluid, it will nourish, it will give nutrition to this nervous system or the neurons which are present inside the brain and in the spinal cord. So the neurons which are present in the spinal cord and brain will receive nutrients from this cerebrospinal fluid only. So in this way, cerebrospinal fluid supplies nutrients, oxygen to these neurons present in the central nervous system, and they will collect the nitrogenous waste materials, carbon dioxide from these neurons, and all these carbon dioxide and neurons again, they will be sent to in the brain region to plexus will be there. So anterior choroid plexus and one is posterior choroid plexus. 2 plexus will be there. So these plexus regions are having a richly supplied blood vessels. So these blood vessels, they will give nutrients into this cerebrospinal fluid. And from the cerebrospinal fluid, the blood vessels will collect nitrogenous waste materials and carbon dioxide. So in this way, the nervous system is connected to this blood or vascular system, blood system or circulatory system through this anterior choroid plexus and posterior choroid plexus, which are present in our brain. So in this way, here in this region, the outside this nervous system, we are having this meninges will be there. Inside this, in between these meninges also, the cerebrospinal fluid will be there. So 3 meninges will be there. So these 3 meninges also, in between these 3 meninges also, in between the innermost one and middle one, in between these 2 layers, cerebrospinal fluid will be there. So this also this cerebrospinal fluid also acts like a lubricant, and it also acts like a nutrition supplying agent to this neurons present in the spinal cord and brain. So the outside cells are peripheral cells of this brain. Peripheral cells of these spinal cord will receive nutrients from this cerebrospinal fluid, which is present in between the second and innermost meninges. And whereas the innermost neurons will receive nutrients from this cerebrospinal fluid present in the central canal and present in this ventricles region. So in this way, cerebrospinal fluid present in this ventricles, in the central canal, and in between the second and innermost meninges regions. So this is about cerebrospinal fluid. So these are the 5 different types of transcellular fluids. And there is another concept called as fluid shifts. So all these fluids that we discussed so far, they are not static. They will not stay where they are. So the fluids can be shifted from one region to another region, or one compartment to another compartment. So the shifting of fluids from one compartment to another compartment will follow some rules, like if there is some difference in between the hydrostatic pressure and osmotic pressure or osmoregulatory gradients. If there are different gradients, then from high gradient to low gradient region, these fluids will usually shift from highly gradient region to low gradient regions. So we know that water will move from one space to another space through passive transport mechanism, through all these semi-permeable membranes. It may be blood vessel walls, or it may be a plasma membrane, or it may be a peritoneal membrane. So through all these biological membranes, water can passively move from where water is high to where water is low. So the movement of water makes this fluid shifts. So, and the movement is also will be done in accordance with this hydrostatic gradients and osmotic gradients. So the shifting will be done to a point where on both sides the gradients are same, or on both sides the balance is established. So until that point, the fluid shifting will be done. So in some medical conditions also, in some diseases also, fluid shifts will be occur. Usually the fluid moves out of the intravascular compartment, that means from blood vessels to the tissues. And in such cases, what will happen when the water is moving from the blood to outside the blood vessels, then blood pressure can drop. So when the blood content is low, then blood pressure will be decreased. So when the blood pressure is decreased, then what will happen? The tissues will not receive enough quantity of nutrients and enough quantity of oxygen. So under such conditions, what will happen? Our brain will not function. Not only brain, heart and kidneys also will not function. So that will result in the death of the, that may result in the death of the organism also. So if the low blood pressure persists for a long time, the organism will die. So for that purpose, the fluid content inside the blood vessels should not be decreased. So, and when it shifts out of the cells, so then what will happen? Inside the cell, cytoplasm will become thick. When the cytoplasm becomes thick, intracellularly, some biochemical reactions will not occur normally. That will result in the dehydration. So under dehydration conditions, all biochemical reactions inside the cell will stop. That's why only usually we see in summer seasons, due to dehydrations, many people will die. So just lack of water inside our tissues is killing our, killing the people or killing the animals. That is the importance of this dehydration condition. So when water is moving from the cells, then what will happen? Due to dehydration, the cells, finally the organism may die. And when excess fluids, if they are accumulated in the interstitial spaces or interstitial compartment, that means outside the cells. So then that will result in a condition called as edema. So edema, it is also called as swelling. So in this case, what will happen? So all the fluid will be, most fluid will be accumulated outside the cell. So then what will happen? The organ systems will be in swollen condition. That results in the, in case of brain, what will happen? The excess fluid inside the brains will result in the increased cranial pressure. So that will result in the rupture of the brain, and finally that may result in the death of the individual also. So for that purpose, all these fluid shifts must be compensated by fluid replacement or diuretics. So the excess fluids should be avoided, and when the fluid components are less in quantity, by giving some this what saline waters, or by giving some liquids to drink. So we have to compensate the lost liquids, otherwise the organism will not survive. So this is about the fluid shifts. And next, third spacing. So another final concept in this topic is third spacing. So third spacing is nothing but it is abnormal condition in which the body fluids will be accumulated in extracellular, usually, and extravascular spaces. So outside the blood vessels and outside the cells. So when the blood vessels, when the excess water is present outside the cells, that means in the tissue fluid, or in this all these water transcellular fluid. So when the water is excess, when the fluid is excess inside the cells, that is not called third spacing. When the fluid is excess inside the blood vessels, that is not called third spacing. So when the fluid excess, apart from these two components, one is cytoplasm, another one is plasma. So apart from these two things, in whatever remaining cases, if the fluid is excess, that is called as third spacing, and it is a abnormal condition. This is not good for the individual. So usually this occurs due to some fire accident. So when our hand is burned, or when our hand touches a hot object, we know that the region where our hand touches the hot object, it becomes filled with a fluid. So it becomes filled with a lot of interstitial tissue fluid. So all the damages caused to that region, so all the cells will rupture and they will release excess water into this tissue fluid. So that condition results in the swelling of this damaged hand due to this burning. So that is called as edema. So due to the severe burns, this intracellular cytoplasm and blood vessel plasma, all these things, they will come out of the cells, they will come out of the blood vessels, and they will accumulate in the interstitial component compartment, that will result in the swelling or edema of the concerned organ. So patients who undergo long difficult operations also, they also, their bodies also accumulate with these excess fluid in their peritoneal fluid. So that's why only I have already told that operated persons, so persons went and underwent these surgeries, they will be supplied with this water pipe and fluid collecting bags to remove this excess fluid from their interstitial, from their peritoneal fluid. So so not only due to severe burns, so in some surgery conditions also, this third spacing condition may arise. So the precise volume of fluid in a patient's third spaces changes over time, and it is difficult to accurate quantity. So in third spacing condition, when third spacing takes place, that may result in the peritonitis or pyometritis and pleural effusions. So when the water is accumulated in the pleura of the spaces in between outside these lungs, that called as pleural effusions, and peritoneal regions, if they are accumulated with excess water, that is called as peritonitis. So in this way, depending on the organ, depending on the region where this third spacing take place, peritonitis, pyometritis, and pleural effusions can take place. So, and in two other diseases also, we can see the accumulation of waters like hydrocephalus. So in some usually children, we can see their head will be swollen like anything. And in glaucoma also, water will accumulate, or liquid will be accumulated inside our eyeball. So that condition is glaucoma, and excess fluid accumulation inside this brain is called as hydrocephalus. So theoretically, we may consider them as third spacing, but the volumes are very, very small to consider them as third spacing. So they will not induce the shifting of blood from the blood vessels into this brain region or eyeball region. So and the overall, the blood body volumes are very less when compared to other third spacing conditions. So that's why this hydrocephalus and glaucoma conditions are not considered as third spacing. So this is about body fluids. With this, this topic is over. Let us meet with another topic in next class.